Hey, it's Coach Katie with Solutions Financial Coaching. I wanted to share with you some tips on how to change your money life, your personal finances over the next 6 months that can literally result in changes in your life moving forward forevermore. The process works no matter where you are in the stage of personal finance. So let's jump into some tips on how to do this. First, we're going to talk about discovering where your money is going. It is so crucial for you to know where the money is going now, so that way we can tell it where to go in the future. It's just like going on a road trip. If you do not put a map in where you're starting and where you're finishing, you'll just drive wherever. You will not get to your final destination, at least not in a really good way to do it, right? You'll end up lost and probably losing a lot of time. So this is why you have to discover where your money is going. How do I do that, Katie? So what you do is you would start with tracking your expenses every day. Every single expense that goes out, you are tracking it. Doesn't matter if it's a pack of gum from a vending machine or your normal bills. You're going to track it so that way you know that it's going out and when it's going out. You can also review statements. So you can go in your bank statements, or if you've been using a credit card, you can go through your last 90 days or so of your credit card statements. So this way you can see what your patterns have been. That way you're not changing anything now when you're doing your daily tracking. You can see what it looks like. You can look at holidays. You can go back to any time period and see what your expenses look like and how your spending habits were. Next, you should determine your goals. So what does that mean? That means your short-term and long-term goals excluding retirement. We are not talking about retirement at this time. We're trying to get our very foundational, basic budgeting and money game in place before we talk about anything to do with retirement. So let's talk about your goals. What could that look like? Do you like to travel? Do you need to replace a car or have a big repair coming up? Possibly looking at saving for a house, paying for a kid's college tuition one day. These are types of goals you should be thinking about. Now, I always say they don't have to only be financial. It could be losing weight, possibly, because a lot of that still comes back to being a financial thing when you drill into it. So write down all of your short-term and long-term goals. When you're doing these long-term and short-term goals, you're going to want to do SMART goals. SMART is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So what does that mean? Instead of saying, I want to lose weight, say, I want to lose 10 pounds in 2 months. And then if you really want to get good at this SMART goal business, start saying, okay, I want to lose 10 pounds in 2 months by walking every day, going to the gym 2 to 3 times a week, and cutting out carbs or just watching what I eat. So then you actually give it actionable steps to achieve these goals that you're setting. It's very important to be able to attain them that way. Next, we're going to make a list of upcoming must expenses. These are the type of things that we know they're coming no matter what. Examples would be Christmas and birthdays. We know they're coming every year. We know when they're going to happen. Other things would include like summer camp and daycare, maybe an annual life insurance policy premium, tuition. We know there's a car repair possibly coming in the next 6 months, 12 months, something like that. So make a list of all of these types of things that are definitely coming. Maybe you even have to visit the family and you have to budget for travel. So what you're going to do is make a list of all of these, how much you need for each one, when they are due, and how long between now, whenever you're starting this, into when you need this money. So once you make that list, set that aside. Next, you're going to make a budget. AKA game plan. A budget is just simply telling your money where to go instead of it telling you what to do. So you would take your income, you would take your expenses, you would take these different things that we just talked about as far as having variable expenses, non-variable expenses, and you're going to write them all out. Remember, your budget should reflect your values. There's no way around it. If someone shows me where they've been spending money or even saving money, I can tell them where their values are and their priorities are. So keep that in mind as you're creating this budget. Next, you're going to want to make sure you have an emergency fund of at least a minimum of $1,000. If it takes you a little time to get there, maybe you've never had $1,000 in your life in a savings account, that's okay. Take your time, but make that the priority of your life right now, is getting to that $1,000. A lot of people do push back and say $1,000 is not enough. It is not meant to cover everything. It's meant to get you started. And by having that emergency fund, you're now able to take care of some smaller things that are going to come up versus having to put it on a credit card or just not or go without when you really need it. So before you focus on anything else, make sure you have a minimum of $1,000 emergency fund. And if you say it's not enough, think about what number would make you feel better. Sometimes it's a deductible amount for somebody, like your health insurance or your car deductible, like $1,500 maybe. That's fine, but make sure you hit this number as fast as you possibly can so we can move on to the fun parts. I want to reiterate how important this emergency fund is and why we do it before we jump into working on debt or anything else. And it's because if you have this emergency fund, now you can pay for those small things versus having to put it on a credit card or take a 401k loan. It gives you space from going further into debt. So that's why it's so important. Next, you must protect this emergency fund. It is not to be used for random things because you forgot to cook dinner. It's not for those types of things. It's for things that are urgent and immediately need to happen and be taken care of, or else your life cannot continue on as normal. In the very beginning, an example would be a car tire going flat. This is important because you need to be able to get to school or to work or get your kids to school. Your life does not continue on if you do not get this repaired. So this would be an example of a true emergency in the very beginning before you have any other funds saved up for a car specifically. But again, protect this emergency fund the best that you possibly can. It will help you have peace of mind, I promise. Now that you have your emergency fund set up, now it's time to reflect on those goals that you set up previously, those short-term and long-term goals, as well as any of the upcoming expenses like the child care for summer camp or Christmas, those types of things. And because of those, we're going to set up a high-yield savings account online. I personally like Ally. It's my favorite bank account for sinking funds, and it's free. There's no fees, no minimums. So it's a great account to have. So go ahead and open up an account there, and then that way we can look at that later on and set up transfers to it specifically for these goals that we have talked about. Remember those savings goals that we talked about and how I mentioned that you need to decide how much you need, when you need it by, based on when you're starting this process? This is when this is really important, especially regarding the Ally savings account. And that is because now we're going to break down how much we need to save each month and add it to our budget. So that way we can start preparing for those things now, and you'll have enough money for when you actually need it. It's also important to remember that not everything may fit into your budget at this time. So what that means is, yes, you can afford anything you want, but not everything at one time. So you might have to push some things to the back burner while you're saving for more urgent goals. If summer camp is needed and we only have a few months, that would trump over the Christmas savings. So you need to make a list of priorities and make sure that you are following which ones are coming due soonest. So an example of how to do this sinking fund, you would actually put the money into the account. You're going to set up automatic transfers. And so say you need to transfer $100 a month to cover the 4 goals that we've set up, and they each need $25. So in Ally, you would set up the bucket, aka sinking fund, to be 25% for each of those 4 goals that I mentioned as my example. So that way every month $100 will transfer over automatically, taking out the human error of not doing it. And then they'll break down 25% once you set these up into Ally account. I hope that makes sense. A lot of people sometimes push back because they're like, why would I set up these expenses for like summer camp, Christmas, things like that ahead of focusing on debt? Wouldn't we want to pay off the debt faster and save money? I understand the logic behind that method, and it does financially sometimes make sense. However, we know these things are coming regardless if we're prepared or not, right? So why would we put ourselves in the position of them coming due and not having saved for them and then have to put it on a credit card to be able to pay for it because they're coming anyway? So this way, I would rather see you pay off debt a little bit slower, but cash flow these things that we know are going to happen. So that is why I put these ahead of paying off debt. Of course, you should be keeping the minimums paid during this time as well on the debts. We're not letting anything lapse. But this is why I'm not throwing a bunch of extra money towards the debt at this time until we have all of this set up, our foundation set up. With that in mind, this may be a time for you to get creative and have to save more money or earn more money, creating a bigger shovel for whatever goal we're working on. Maybe you need to have a yard sale or work extra hours, get a second job, or maybe it's just cutting back on the expenses so you have more income in your budget to be able to allocate to these things. Now, speaking of debts, it's time to make a list of debts. We need to know what debt there is, how much the balance is, what the minimum payment is, the interest rate, and the due date. And you really need to have this list ready, available at all times so you never are late on paying these debts. So go ahead and make that list. Now that you have that list, you want to decide if you should do the snowball method, which is paying off the smallest debt and then paying the minimums on everything else. So all of your extra money would be going towards the smallest debt balance. Or do you want to do the avalanche method, which is paying off the highest interest rate debt first while paying the minimums on everything else? Either of these are great methods. I've done both in my life. I've teach both. They both are great. However, the snowball method tends to be more of a psychological win for people because you start to see the debts actually snowballing, getting smaller and smaller. Avalanche method tends to save money on interest rates. But now if all of your interest rates are very similar, then I would recommend doing the snowball method. That way it's good. And while you're doing this list of debts and looking at these methods, exclude the mortgage. If you have a mortgage, do not account it in here. That comes later on in time. All right, now you have your list of debts, you have your list of goals, you have your emergency fund funded, and you have your budget already started. Anything extra in your budget at this point in time is going to be your snowball or your avalanche. It's going to be your shovel to put the money towards these debts. So now, and again, if you've increased your income in any way or cut your expenses so your income is higher, therefore you'll take all that extra money and throw it at either the snowball or avalanche method. Again, snowball is going to be the smallest balance debt and avalanche is the highest interest rate debt. We're excluding the mortgage here. So focus on that budget and figure out if you can put extra money towards it. And another note about the budget, make sure you're able to live within that budget before you start throwing a lot of extra money anywhere. Make sure you're staying within your grocery budget, your dining out line item if you're allowing yourself dining out. Anything on there, make sure you're actually staying within that. Otherwise, the budget is not real, it's just a wish. So the numbers need to be realistic. What that means is you can live within it. You're not overspending every month. And if you are, you need to go back and adjust those numbers and up them if that's what it is. If you cannot get below a certain number, you need to just up it and face the facts. Sometimes it just is the way it is. So make sure it's a realistic budget that you're actually living within these numbers and you can do it for several months in a row before you start throwing a lot of extra money towards debts, towards goals. Otherwise, you'll have to pull the money from the debts and the goals again, defeating the purpose. All right, it's super important to automate your financials. So that means you should set up your sinking funds to Ally on an automatic transfer every month. You should have all of your bills being automatically deducted from your account. You should set up any other transfers if you're still funding that emergency fund. Make sure the automatic transfer to that is happening. Your debts are automatically being paid. Even the extra money for the snowball or avalanche is being put towards the debt automatically. This takes out human error. I mean, we're human, we're busy. We don't want to pay finance charges for being late. We don't want to miss something and then spend the money somewhere else when we had a set goal for it. So automate your life as much as possible. I promise it will bring a lot of peace to you. Remember, every dollar should have a job, whether that is going towards a non-variable or a variable expense, towards groceries, again, that's a variable expense, towards your debts, towards your emergency fund, towards the sinking funds. Every dollar must have a job. So make sure that is happening and you have every dollar accounted for. All right, you don't have debt? That's great. Do you have your emergency fund? If not, that's your focus. How do you determine which one to do? If you are a two-income household, then 3 months is usually sufficient. If you're a one-income household, then I suggest doing at least 6 months of an emergency fund of your normal life expenses. Great, you have no debt and you have your fully funded emergency fund of 3 to 6 months. That's awesome, congratulations. Now's the time to start talking about retirement. Start putting in 15 to 20%, if you can afford it, towards retirement. Start with your works 401k or whatever they have available, especially if they have a match. I'm not going to go into all the different types of things that are out there. I'm not a financial advisor, I'm just a financial coach. So get with your financial advisor about financial investments. But now is the time that you can afford to start putting higher levels of money into that account. So let's start doing that. Once you have 15 to 20% going into retirement accounts, now is the time to start paying off your mortgage very quickly. Don't have a mortgage? This might be the time to start saving for a house if that's important to you. But now all that money is going to your future. After everything that we've discussed is handled, this is the time to go back and review your short-term and long-term goals, those sinking funds. Make sure they still align with your current life. Make sure you still find value in whatever it is you're saving for. And this might be the time that you can really increase your rich life by adding more money to it. Maybe vacation looks different now that you've got everything else taken care of than it did back whenever you first started. Example, my husband and I, when we first got married and had debt, we did not do lavish vacations. Now we can vacation however we want to without having to stress about it. So this is a time to look at those short-term and long-term goals and revise them to make sense with your current life. So don't forget to review your financials from time to time after this, because life does change. So make sure you look at that and keep updating your budget. A budget, again, is just a game plan. It's you telling your money where to go versus it dictating where it's going on its own. Because if you don't manage it, it will manage you, and you'll be sad because you'll not have money to do things that are important to you. Because remember, that budget should match your values. Dig really deep through all this. Make sure you know what is important to you. What do you value? What brings you joy? What actually fulfills your life? What does that look like? Ramit Sethi always says a rich life is something that you should be striving for. And this is where all of these will help. Remember, follow these processes, because when you do and you get your life on a really solid path and foundation, you can actually start living within the moment a lot easier. Stress will be reduced. Emergencies become inconveniences. I promise that is the way following the process will work. So find peace in the process, find peace in the journey, and keep going. You've got this.